First, you tell us that it is manly to keep your word. All right? If you are a man, you keep your word. And now all that the black people in this country are demanding, and even the black people in the whole world are demanding, is that you keep your word. You told us we were free. Well, then show us that we're free. You told us that there is justice, equality for all in this country. Well, then stick to your word and let us see the justice and equality for all. Or else admit to us that you're not a man, you're a worm, you're afraid of us, you're afraid to give us equal stand. You're afraid that if you give us equal ground, that we will match you and we will override you. And if that's what you're afraid of us, then tell us that just what you're afraid of. But don't keep hiding it from us and holding this up to us, and every time we ask you for something, you give us a little bit of something, and it's all tokenism. We don't want tokenism. And there are most black men in this world that don't want charity. And yet still every time we ask you for something, you give us a little piece, a little piece. You're playing games with us. We're not children. We're big men. I've seen my father have to put up with all kinds of stuff. He was a big man. He raised a family. He went down south, and he had to go around to the back door with his wife. We're not asking for anything. We're not asking for any favors. All we want is what's ours.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of the 13%. I am your host, Cynthia McDonald. So my co-host is running a bit behind, but that's what happens when you are dealing with public transportation and working far. So I'm going to do my best to hold it down until, Arthur arrives and also our guests arrive. But regardless, we are here, family, and I'm so glad that you guys decided to join for this conversation. But before I get into it, just get some housekeeping out the way. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to YFNA News. Also hit the bell so every time that YFNA News goes live, you actually get a notification that we are live, whether it be our show, the 13%, our sibling show in black and white, or all the particular shows that are going to be coming out in the days, the weeks, and the months ahead, because we are growing. Yes, we are, people. We are growing this network, and I'm really excited for the days and weeks to come. And also, if you like the content, make sure that you make sure you consider being a Patreon. You can join to be a Patreon for little as $1. $1 a month. We prefer the $5 mark, but if you can come in at least $1, that will help us out tremendously to grow the network, to grow our content, to make our content better for all of you lovely people who happen to tune in every week to watch us. All right, so I believe I got all that out the way. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Shout out to the mods. Shout out to all the people who are joining us in the movement. Shout out to ADOS and ADOS allies. Thank you guys again for joining. So let us first start with some stuff. Let's start out with some stuff. I kind of like to actually start these particular conversations with what's going on in the news. So let's talk about what's in the buzz. All right, so some of the things that are coming up today, let's see. Well, we got a new president. President-elect Joe Biden is going to be our 46th president. Let's go ahead and get a picture of that going up right now. I love all my bells and whistles. Yes, Biden wins. So he's going to be our 46th president of the United States. And we're going to be talking more about that later on with our guest, Chad Brown, and also Friday Jones when they join us. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. So I'm going to hold on to that. But other things that are in the buzz, let's see. What else is going on? So we also have Ben Carson, who actually tested positive for coronavirus. So we're going to put that up right now. And I'm just going to read a little bit about this particular issue that's going on with our urban development chairperson, Ms. Dr. Ben Carson. And this is actually an article from The Hill. And it says Housing and Urban Development Secretary Ben Carson has tested positive for coronavirus. A spokesperson and a longtime advisor confirmed on Monday, that is today. Spoke with my brother, Dr. Ben Carson, earlier, and he's doing extraordinarily well. He is so grateful to have access to powerful therapeutics. We also pray for the millions who celebrated over the weekend and may have exposed themselves to COVID-19, tweeted Armstrong Williams, who advised Carson's presidential campaign. A HUD spokesperson also confirmed diagnosis. Carson is the latest high-ranking Trump administration official to contract the virus. ABC News, which first reported Carson had tested positive, noted that Carson was experiencing symptoms on Monday morning, but was in good spirits. Carson attended a White House gathering on election night last week, where dozens of guests mingled and wore few masks or observed social distancing. Several White House staff members, including Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, has also tested positive for the coronavirus. President-elect Joe Biden has been declared the winner of the 2020 election, but President Trump has refused to concede. Carson and other administration officials are largely avoiding commenting on the election results thus far. Carson, who ran an unsuccessful presidential campaign in 2016, has been one of the just handful of officials to serve in Trump's cabinet since the beginning of his term, and he has been a lone Black person in the cabinet throughout. So yeah, folks, it looks like that Dr. Carson also has coronavirus. I believe that the chief of staff, if I'm not mistaken, has tested positive for coronavirus as well. So who knows? I do wish him a speedy recovery. I don't wish, ill on anybody. However, I think it's very interesting that a lot of these things are coming up with folk, especially when they're not taking what is happening with the country, with the pandemic, very seriously. So we're seeing this happen. So what else is in the buzz? And I'm definitely going to have like our guests to really even bring to talk about that as well. But another thing that is in the buzz, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this particular story. Let me go ahead and bring this up. About Kawan Jaden Charles. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up this particular story. Pardon me, people. I'm trying to get my technology together. I'm going to bring it up eventually. So this particular story is about the body of a missing Baldwin teen found near Laurelville. Family remembers him during the vigil. And this was a teenager that was found, who was missing and then found dead in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I believe. So Charles, 15, of Baldwin, was seen last Friday leaving his home in Baldwin with an unknown person. His family says his body was found in a field in Laurelville. No word yet on the cause of his death. I've been crying all day. I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm missing my son. I'm missing his smile. I'm missing his jokes, his mother Roxanne Nelson said. The Iberia Parish Sheriff's Office says that on November 2nd, 2020, at approximately 5 p.m., deputies in the Iberia Parish Sheriff's Office, Patrol Division, and the Bureau of Investigation located the body of a male juvenile in Roar adjacent to Ed Broussard Road near the village of Laurelville. While the sheriff's office did not confirm the identity of the person found, they said the person had reported as missing to Baldwin police Department on October 30th. His family says that he was last seen leaving his house with a friend and his friend's mom. I want the lady who came to get my son without my permission, his dad's permission, to be held accountable. You cannot just take someone's son, bring them to your house, and not be held accountable. She took them to her house. He was alive and well when he was here, and now he is dead. And when we went to Laurelville to her house, Nelson said. Nelson said that she had not been told very much information about how her son died. He has been a big knot on his forehead, and it's also obvious that someone hit him on the head with something, Nelson added. Now, on this particular story, our sibling show is going to be covering it in further depth. I did look at another story concerning this particular young man who was killed, I would even say murdered, on Facebook earlier. But the thing about it is that they actually showed the photographs of the young man, and I was thinking about actually showing them, but they're just too gruesome to show. And at least for my sensibility. So that's why I didn't do it. But our hearts really goes out to this young man. Some are even saying that this is a modern day lynching. And what this really tells me is when I just see stories like this is that we just still have so much work to do when it comes to even, protecting our young men, protecting our young boys, making sure that they're okay, because we're still living in very perilous and trying times. So, yeah. What a heck of a segue to actually come up with to even talk about the election. But I think that bringing up a lot of these particular points was going on even in the country around us, especially when it comes to race and sensibilities and actually how it even affects other people. It's extremely important. So, people, we're going to take a short break from here, and I'm going to go ahead and start bringing up my guests so that we can continue to have this conversation. Hello, family, and we are back. And without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and start bringing up our guests as they trickle in. Oh, goodness, I think that life done got to everybody. But I do want to first welcome our guest. Well, the first one would be Sister Friday Jones from ADOS LA and one half host of Politics in Black. Hey, sis, how you doing?
Cynthia, how you doing?
I'm good. How's everything? It's so good to see your lovely face.
Life is good. LA is LA. These elections are definitely affecting us here, particularly because the movement of people, including our VP elect, Kamala Harris. So this state in particular is doing some serious maneuverings, and even with our mayor, the Mayor Garcetti, being part of the Biden camp. Also, he's co-chair of that campaign, which is a strong indicator that he very well may be pulled into the Biden-Harris cabinet. So. LA's got a lot going on. California has a lot going on right now.
Indeed. Well, that's why, that's one of the reasons why I was really excited to have this conversation specifically with you and Chad once Chad is able to join us. And Arthur, once he is able to join us as well. But because Kamala is from California, and spent she was the AG of San Francisco and then the AG of the state, and there was a lot of controversy even around her record, and and so when she was picked to even run as VP, I was like,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not so much. I think it's a sort of her climb in terms of a resume, if you will, makes sense. A lot of people clearly do not move that quickly up corporate ladder that is America. Um, However, she was able to sort of be in the right places at the right time, with people supporting her. And I'm someone who voted for her on on the strength of Howard University. Howard University has an amazing network. And I was like, oh, okay, she's a Sister Bison. All right, I can get behind her. But fast forward to now, and kind of looking at her record and her politics, I'm kind of like, I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't know what you look like in the White House, particularly for what I would call African American, but specificity for ADOS people. One of the tweets that I posted, which is very much politically incorrect, was around the fact that what is his name? The Republican Scott. He's a
Tim
Republican
Scott?
senator.
Is it Tim Scott? Yeah,
So
Tim Scott.
Senator Tim Scott, he's not supportive of reparations. He is very proud, and rightfully so. I don't like taking things away from people. However, I do want to point out things that people should consider. And he's very proud of the fact that within one generation, kind of going from his grandfather to his grandfather was a sharecropper, and he was able to be a congressman and now a senator. I think when you kind of take a look at politics of the country as a whole, being an immigrant and getting to those spaces is not unheard of. It's not unusual. It's actually pretty standard, right? But when you look at the ADOS experience in America, you have our first president, not Black president, not having an ADOS background, and now you have our first VP who does not have an ADOS background. And while I do not take that individual accomplishment away from Senator Tim Scott, I think you do kind of have to look at, well, everyone else has done it. And, like in terms of being given an accolade or it being special, if you want to have a real conversation about American context, that should be the norm. The fact that you're one of very few, who has been able to make that transition from an ADOS space is actually a problem. And so while an individual accomplishment, it certainly shines a light on the fact that America has a race problem. We are far from post-racial, and that's something to consider.
Indeed. And I think that's really important that you just brought that up, because I kind of wanted to show this particular chart that I found earlier today. This is from Statistica, and it's really concerning, like, what the key issues that people voted on. Now, as far as like where like the votes actually went to. So we have, like, the economy, of course, it seems like it was number one. Most of those particular votes went to Trump, and which I expected that to happen, only because, like, oftentimes when it comes to economy and economical issues, that is like the Republican bread and butter, right? But I found it like extremely interesting that the very second thing that was on this particular list, as far as like key issues were concerned, was about race. Did you want to actually, like, comment on that?
So race inequity, I didn't hear Biden's speech. I kind of saw the news bite, where he said Black people supported me, have always supported me, and I'm going to support you. I don't really know what that means in terms of legislation. When you look at his Lift Every and you look at his immigration plan, there is some language in the Lift Every Voice plan about small business loans and increasing the number of small business loans, which needed to happen anyway, regardless of who was in the presidency. However, the language says minority, right? And so I don't know how you target Black people, particularly ADOS people, when the language says minority. There is some things in there, like, about HBCUs and college. But again, if you're not going to take a look at who's currently going to HBCUs and who can afford to go to HBCUs. A personal story, my daughter, when she was going to college, she did a Black college tour, and Howard was on the tour. And during the tour, they straight up asked the kids, do any of you have parents that went to Howard? And she said yes. And so they pulled her into a room, did whatever kind of interview they did, and pretty much on the spot gave her a legacy admission, which she came back and told me. And that kind of surprised me. And I was like, all right, well, this works. But the problem is for you to stay in our home state of California is $20,000 a year, versus you going to Howard University, and that's room and tuition. And you going to Howard University is more like $40,000 a year. So not that I can necessarily even swing a bat per se at the 20, maybe. I mean, it's a nice car note. It's a really nice car. It's a really nice car. So if you see me, I don't drive a nice car, because these kids, I got 2 of them, went to college. So there's my nice car. But the reality is she's a kid who should have been there, right? We are ADOS people. The school was built specifically for freedmen to go to college. I think it started off maybe as nursing and seminary or something like that. So the school is entrenched in American history. And here I am, ADOS, mom, and I can't send my ADOS kid to college because writing a $40,000 check is quite a challenge, and when you look at their policy, you look at the immigrant policy has something about maintaining a medical field, maintaining the medical field for immigrants. Well, that's something that was kind of lost from, Black nursing used to be a thing, and Black medical school used to be a thing. And then money moved away from that, and focus moved away from that. And now it's an immigrant thing. And that's whether it's an African immigrant, Nigerian, or a Filipino. The Philippines have a significant number of folks who come over with their medical licensing, and they take a couple of more classes, and boom, they are plugged into jobs. But that language isn't even on. It's not even on the Lift Every Voice, and sing. And so you have the criminal justice. And criminal justice is important, but that's important for the country in general, because we over criminalize, and obviously Black folks disproportionately carry the burden of incarceration. I think the last number I saw was like 1 in 23 men. Do you know how absurd that statistic is? That 1 in 23 Black men has either been incarcerated or been arrested in their lifetime. That to me is that's obscene. And that means that the society that we have built is dysfunctional. And it seems to me that there's no spotlight on it unless you're talking about Black folks in particular. But I'm sorry, this needs to be like an American conversation, because it's reflective of our country. And how can you be proud of a statistic that is that ridiculous? So, they have their plan, they have their platform. We'll see what it materializes. Under Obama, we certainly lost a significant amount of wealth. The last little bit of wealth that we had was really lost under his presidency. Wall Street really was kind of saved in a material way. And unfortunately, our homes and our houses, they were not. I know 2008, predates him getting in to office, but the administration of the recovery from the real estate happened kind of under his watch. And so I don't know. I don't, there's a lot of celebration going on. There's a lot of people, like, you would think, this was the Wizard of Oz and the the witch was dead. And I sit and I look at these celebrations and I'm like, I don't know how much changes, for people, and for the Republicans to really prioritize like the economy and then race and equity to be like what Democrats lean to. I don't know that the Democrats have really this glowing history. We can look at the last 4 elections, let's say. I don't know that they come out as like this bastion of equality. I think their platform, and I am a member of LA County's Democratic Party. I think their platform is very, inclusive in the sense that we want to be all things to everyone. But they certainly, within the space of that, don't have anything specific for Black folks, because the idea is, oh, we all are equal. No, when Black folks are equalized, we can have that conversation. And that's what I tell people often. Until we are ready to do that, then I'm not willing to play the diversity game. I'm not when it comes to politics. Now, I'm a people person and I love people in general, but when we're going to have a conversation sort of about enslaved times, doesn't mean that has changed. And if you're not going to be honest or on it, then we're going to have problems politically. So anyway, talk about, where do we go from here? That is a conversation that I think definitely needs to start happening. And I need to shout out, God, what is her name? Kelly Pryor of ADOS Las Vegas, because she put up a graphic of the income levels. And even though it was a lot of Asians, East Asians, even though they don't, even though they don't have large populations per se, the fact that they're able to command so much more in income, and then the American Black is down at 37,000, and the top of the scale with East Indians was at like 139,000, and then everything in between. No, you assimilation immigrants, sorry, we need to have conversations when we're talking about diversity.
I stepped into a fire conversation here.
Yeah, you did. Also, people.
Let me run back into my hole.
I'm sorry to be late, Cynthia, Arthur, but great to see you both.
It's late too, so it's all good. How about that? So
we are glad to see you.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yes, welcome, my co-host Arthur Ward.
Yeah.
And welcome Chad Brown from ADOS Los Angeles, and also other half of Politics in Black podcast that comes on every other Sunday on YouTube on the ADOS LA platform. Shout out to all of you all that have joined us in this conversation. So I guess we have segued to the where do we go from here? Y'all, I had stuff. Oh yeah. So one of the things that I kind of wanted to highlight going back to Ms. Harris is this particular narrative.
That is so insulting.
It is.
And you got a lot of our dear ADOS unenlightened sisters out there co-signing this picture and saying, what's wrong with it? Well, sister, you need to pick up a history book and figure out what's wrong with it. I can't tell you everything from here, but it would take about a week.
Right.
Yeah.
I had a whole conversation with one of my friend's mother about what's wrong with this photograph. And but I'm going to let you guys chime in first before I give you like a highlight of that particular conversation.
Well, first of all, thanks again for inviting us here. I love the show. I love what you guys are doing. So I appreciate the invite and being allowed to come onto your platform. I wholeheartedly 100% agree with Arthur. That picture is offensive. It's insulting. If you know anything about the history of Ruby Bridges and what she had to go through, being walked into school by federal officers, enduring that environment on a day-to-day basis, and then to cast. I have a problem with this entire narrative of casting Kamala Harris as this frontline, desegregationist. As if she was bussed into hostile environments, spat on.
With my mama. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's just kind of what we are seeing now, which is like, thank God for ADOS, because it allows us to clearly see these things now for what they really are, which is lineage erasure, right? Which is allowing a Kamala Harris to cosplay as ADOS and tie her history to ours, as divergent as those two things are, and then, ride that to political success. And so, I agree 100% with Arthur. I think, I think we're also in a very unique position now because we are in a post ADOS world. So we're all able to see these things now. Because I know in 2008, I didn't see it, right? I didn't see it. I saw someone who looked like me, who I thought would be have the best interests of my community at heart, and cast my vote that way and cast my support that way, right? And I think that we are in a very unique position now because we do have that lens of ADOS, which brings a clarity to your vision and to what you see and how you perceive things that we just didn't have before. And so that's what I'm thankful for, is that Kamala Harris can't get away with doing something like this without hearing from us, because we all see clearly what she's attempting to do.
Yeah.
Right. I agree. It's funny. Like, I was listening to Be the Power the other night. Shout out to y'all. And they had a guest that was on there who was talking about, what did he say? I think he said that I did not understand how politically uneducated I was until after Obama became president.
Absolutely.
And I would have to say the same thing for myself. Like, I think like a lot of us were so, enamored that we finally got a Black person, a Black president, right? And, I know that when my father was still alive, the family was in the living room, and we was all around TV and crying like, oh my God, we finally got a Black president. Racism over now, right? Everything is okay. And we were so wrong.
Yeah.
We were so wrong. Especially like when you were talking about it earlier, Friday, about, how Black people actually lost wealth under Obama.
Well, I'm embarrassed to say that I actually worked full time for Obama in 2008. I was originally working for Hillary. And then when I saw that he won Iowa, I said, oh, it's serious. So I dragged myself over to the Prudential Plaza where the Obama headquarters was. And the first person I saw there was the main person I didn't want to see, and that was Rahm Emanuel. And he told me, he says, Ward, I know you was going to bring your butt over here sooner or later. So they gave me top pay, and they put me in Indiana as punishment to do canvassing and political work for Obama. And then Rahm told me, don't take your gun, Arthur. And so I took my gun and went down there to Indiana and worked for the full year for Obama. So
yeah,
I don't think that we should be embarrassed by that. And I say that
I was just going to say the same thing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I'm a person that likes to learn lessons early, right? And sometimes God will show you a lesson real early. And I think we got our lesson early on Obama. And if we hadn't received that lesson, then I think actually would be in a weaker position now, because what would have happened with that, and this sounds, it's unfortunate that it sounds like this, but if he had kind of gotten in there and done just a little bit of good, that would have been enough for us. And then the next person to come behind, we would have completely ignored. Because he was a lesson for us, we had to engage. We had to engage, and we had to wake up, and we had to get smart. And I would take that over going to sleep, because he did one thing or two. So sometimes you gotta step back, and you gotta kind of go, okay, did we need 2 terms of him? Probably not. Probably not. But at the same time, I appreciate the fact that we got that lesson early.
I mean, I agree with Friday. I mean, you hear Yvette talk about it a lot about timing.
Yeah.
And I think that the Obama presidency, both terms, were very much a matter of the right timing for where Black America was at that point.
Mm.
And we you know, a lesson that we had to learn to get to this current moment.
Mm.
For me, you know, if you recall, like he came in and, you know, the markets were crashing. I was actually working in financial services at the time.
Mm.
And so really his first, you know, big presidential move was to bail out the banks, right? And
Right.
to, you know, sort of save the economy as it was casted. But then as we started to learn more about that, we saw that, you know, he bailed out Wall Street, didn't bail out Main Street. And we saw the decimation of our communities, of our home ownership, of our, you know, if you had a retirement or anything like that. Black folks kind of bore the brunt of all of that under Obama, right?
Yes.
And for me, when I look at it, I mean, I feel like Obama was always going to be a play of this system. I felt like that was kind of like the ace card that America was holding to keep the Negroes in check if we ever got too, you know, unruly, right?
Hmm.
But I think that America played that card a little bit too early because we were able to learn from an Obama, like you heard Friday say, over 2 terms. Then we come into, you know, this current administration where it's very obvious that, you know, we were told under Obama that I was blocked, right? I couldn't do it because, you know, I had a Republican Congress that was against me, even though we had a Democratic Congress for 2 years, right?
For 2
But I
years.
had 3 years, yeah. So, but he was told, you know, the narrative we got is that he was blocked. You know, they were standing in the way and his hands were tied, etc. And one of the things I think Trump has taught us is that there's a lot more power in that executive office than Obama wanted to let us know he had, right? We see
Hmm.
Trump doing all types of things through executive order and moving in a different way than we've seen other presidents.
Hmm.
So for me, we needed an Obama to get to a Trump so that we could get to truly, you know, authentic Black politics and understanding that it's going to take more than a brown face in a high place. And oh
Yes.
yeah, the presidency, he does have some power and he does have some cachet that he
Hmm.
can put to work for our communities once we get the right person and we get, you know, we really compel them to do something.
Yes. I mean, he established a legislative path for DACA. I mean, a group of people that aren't even citizens, that have
Correct.
no skin in the game other than being the anchors to parents that were illegally crossing the border as criminals. Okay. So I'm looking at all of this, and I even looked at Kamala Harris, and I'm like, and I was reflecting back for all the work that I did for Obama, and I was like, I said, did I help to open this door? You know, I mean, it's like I'm looking at all this, and it's like I I just want our people at this point to switch gears, get more concerned about our issues, and push through this reparations thing. Now, where do we go from here? There are 4 major things that I think that we need to concentrate on as far as where do we go from here. Forget HR 40. I think that ADOS really needs to make a strong push for a brand new bill. I think that we need to do overt marketing to the general, to Black people in general, about the difference between the INCOBRA program and the ADOS program, especially the thing about them wanting to distribute American reparations to Black immigrants. Okay, and this reparations authority, which will control all of the resources, and which, if they are allowed to be on that, if this commission is allowed to happen, this language that's on their website can be written into law. You know, people, we must never forget that anything is legislatively possible.
Mhm.
Okay. The third thing we need to do is to press reparations overall. Keep the word reparations on people's minds and their mouths. And the last thing that's the really big piece is more education of ADOS people in general, because I think that the biggest stumbling block to reparations is not the white folks and it's not the immigrants, it's really us. I think it's really us, because we are not educated enough, and there are not enough numbers of us that are interested in our self-interest.
Yeah, I mean, I
Well,
really I agree with that, Arthur. I mean, Friday and I had the opportunity to talk to some New Orleans Loyola law school students
Mhm.
late last week. And that's the exact point, because they asked that question, you know, how can we get engaged? How can we get involved? And for me, and I know Friday did this, and I know Cynthia, you probably did this, and Arthur as well. Once you discover ADOS, there's a process of self-education that you have to go through, right? Like I was digging through old Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore videos and because once I found it, I was like, this makes sense. Now let me understand where it came from and get up to speed, right? And that's that self-education process that you have to go through if you're going to be an effective advocate, right? If you're gonna, you got to do the recurring training, as we say, right? So I think education really is that linchpin to how we move forward, because too many of us don't know who we are. And if you know who you are, you don't understand where you come from or what you have contributed to the land that you occupy.
That's right.
And you don't understand what has been taken from you. Like a conversation, I worked in finance, so a conversation I have a lot in my network is Black America. We don't understand the scale of American wealth. Like we don't have a comparison or anything that makes sense to us to be able to translate what $100 trillion looks like, right? Like because we have been, you know, largely locked out and kept wealthless. We don't have those standards of comparison to be able to say, oh, well, you know, I know my Caucasian friend who has this summer home and his boat, and he goes on vacations overseas, and you know he's got a 401k and an IRA. We don't understand that they're playing a completely different game than what we're playing.
Exactly.
We don't understand that they're not thinking about how do I pay my rent, or how do I keep my lights on, or the day-to-day, you know, how do I keep food in the house? They are not dealing with those day-to-day sort of dilemmas that ADOS America has to deal with, you know, constantly. It's like, you know, you go to sleep thinking about where your next meal is going to come from, sort of.
Right.
So I think to that education piece, that's all part of it. We need to understand not only how, with clarity, our position, which Tone does a great job of translating through the data, or interpreting through the data, but we also need to understand what has been taken and the scale of what has been taken. Because I think once you understand, because you know, ain't nothing like Black folks coming after you for their money, right? Once you understand the size of the bag that's been taken away from you, right, and hidden away, because they don't flash the way, you know, we get a little bit and we want to show it because we've been without for so long, right? They don't show it. They pass it along. You know, $68 trillion in wealth transfer, you know, post-COVID numbers, who knows what that looks like. But I'm just saying, they pass it along and we don't have any visibility into that. So we don't understand what is occurring as we are dying, as we are starving, as we are being criminalized, as we are being incarcerated. So I think that education piece, Arthur, back to what you were saying, is huge in our communities. Not only educating, like we got to educate ourselves first. We have to become, you know, ironclad in who we are, what our lineage is, and what is owed to us. And then you can go out and start educating others about you. Because I guarantee you, once we start talking our talk and saying ADOS amongst ourselves and talking about how we are owed reparations, it as normal kind of discussion, like you go to the barbershops, you hear it. You're at the basketball courts, you hear it. You know, on the buses and waiting on the trains and all those places, you start hearing that. They will start to understand a little bit. Outside communities, other communities will start to understand a little bit better. Oh, the Black people are talking about reparations, right? I was waiting on the bus and I heard two brothers talking about reparations. Or, you know, I was walking through the grocery store and the cashier was talking to the lady checking out about reparations. So they will start to, in turn, because they study us more than we study them. We also have to understand that, right?
True.
They look and watch what we're doing. That's why our culture is so pervasive, because they see something good and they come and they try to pluck it out, right? So if we start making this and normalizing, I love what Yvette Carnell said on our show, make it a lifestyle. Like we are living, walking, talking, and breathing reparations and a Black agenda and Black empowerment and collective uplift. They already hear us, but then they will start to understand it. And then if you have a solid basis of education, you are able to help them along that path of understanding. And so,
wait, Arthur,
you know,
before you say that, let me respond.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So, Dr. King said, revolution, the warren of despair, cannot be sustained through despair. And I'm going to repeat that. Revolution, the born of despair, cannot be sustained through despair. I think that Black Lives Matter makes money on Black despair.
Absolutely.
Ooh, talk about a sister, girlfriend.
Yes.
Say that again. Say that one more time.
Black Lives Matter makes money on Black despair.
Yes.
Come
And
on.
that's not sustainable. That's absolutely not sustainable. Where NARC or in Cobra, in terms of their reparations ideology, I think what has not been interjected into that particular conversation is we need to look at ADOS up until maybe 1964 or 68, somewhere in that civil rights era. And the reason we need to sort of do a stop there, where slavery and reparations and Jim Crow is concerned, is because that's kind of like where the crux of the multi-generational assault on ADOS people happened. I do believe that there needs to be another commission to look at race, incarceration, the war on drugs. We can look at, disenfranchisement in terms of lending disparities from 1970, let's say, to present. And I do think that in that space, there is reasonable argument to say that Black people generally across the board, not just ADOS people, were affected. And based on that, then there is some outcome. There is some repair. I don't think in Cobra and NARC I have been mature enough to actually say that out loud. And as a person, I'm telling you, I am mature enough to say that out loud, and I think that it matters.
Do you think that Pan-Africanism is an expression of injury?
I don't understand Pan-Africanism, and that is because this planet has a sun. It has a planet with the sun. I don't care where you go on the face of this planet, you're going to find Black people. Now, if we want to call it Pan-African as opposed to Third Rockism, I don't know. I'm honest to God, I'm not really being funny or facetious. If you go into Asian cultures and the ones that are real with you, they will tell you that their original people were Black people. If you go to Asia now, the oldest set of Asian people are Black people. So I don't understand this idea of Pan-African in a way where we got to bow down to the continent. I think the continent is wonderful. But you know what? I think Black people that's up in the Himalayas somewhere are wonderful too. I think Black folks in the Caribbean and in South America are wonderful too. I tell you guys, I'm part Irish. I got my African ancestor. My great grandmother Tracy came here from the Congo. I got the Shinnecock Nation. That's who I am. The people in the Shinnecock Nation to me look like Black people. So I don't understand, and I really don't understand when 10% of the world's population is non-melanated. I don't understand how you come at me with Pan-Africanism. I just don't. That's just me. That's me personally. I root for Black people. I want Black people to win. I understand colonialism. I understand colonialism's impact on multiple continents. I want the Afro-Brazilians in Brazil to win. I want us to win. However, when you come to me, the typical conversation, and I had one with a powerful Pan-Africanist who's well connected to different organizations. I had a conversation with him, and he says to me, "Oh, anything that leads with America paying homage to the white man, I got a problem with." And people who don't believe in Pan-Africanism, because I go back and forth to the motherland and I do X, Y, and Z. If that's your life calling, if that's your life's work, if you call to do that, then that is your work to do. Right. That is not everybody's calling, and you can't then turn around and penalize Americans or American Blacks and act like we have more responsibility, let's say, than the people on the continent, than the people in South America, than the people in the Caribbean, than the people up in Nova Scotia. Because if you know Jamaicans' history, you know after they fought, the Queen was like, all right, y'all can go over here. Right. And those are African people by way of Jamaica into Nova Scotia. And they have very rich history. How
Right.
you telling me I'm more responsible because you're here and we born in the same place than any other black person on the planet? I
Right.
need you to go meet with a Sentinelese chief if they let you on the island. And I need you to have that conversation because guess what? They black people too.
That's right. And I'll tell you, I've been to 14 countries in Africa, more countries than most Africans have been to. And I will tell you this from direct experience, that Africa is the least Pan-African place on the planet. Okay? It's not happening.
I'm glad you said that, Arthur, because I talk a lot about the Africa Con in my network, right? And the con of just the concept of Africa that's been perpetrated on Black Americans particularly. Like, and you heard Friday said, like, post 1968, there was a concerted effort to keep us confused and disjointed and to dismantle those systems of resistance and progress that we had strung together loosely in the 50s and 60s, right? There was a concerted effort post the assassination of King to kind of keep us in a state of disorganization.
Right.
And I, like many people in this ADOS movement, came from a space of Pan-Africanism, right? Because you are on a path of Black empowerment and seeking, what feeds into that, what can undergird that want and that progress, right? Wanting to see a collective uplift. And so for me, Pan-Africanism got to a point where you can't reconcile the ideology with the current situation that you might find yourself and your people in, right?
No.
And then to understand that even on the continent, they do not have a Africa concept.
No.
Right? They have a country and tribal concept. It's not until they get
reconcile it with Barracoon. I don't know how you read Zora Neale Hurston's Barracoon and that's still your thing. Like, you're mad at American Black people because they not living their existence, trying to raise up the continent of Africa.
Right.
Absolutely. And
we 50% of the homeless in America. Where are we supposed to do that? 50% of us have less wealth than $1. So we're supposed to have the resources to do that.
Yeah,
and I think when you go ahead, Arthur. Go ahead. I was just gonna say, I think when you take
go ahead, Chad.
just quickly, I was just gonna say, I think when you take a critical look at Pan-Africanism, not only is it kind of a misdirected and misplaced ideology, I actually think it's weaponized against Black Americans to keep us looking across the Atlantic for some sort of kinship and synergy with a land that we have no knowledge and no connection to, right?
And the same land that sold us.
Yeah, and it only exists in our own imaginations. Like the concept of Africa only exists in our imagination. So that's coming through. Yeah, I was just gonna say, coming through Pan-Africanism for me, that's where I got to the point of that cognitive dissonance, and I couldn't stay in that knowing better. You're right, you know better, you do better, sort of thing.
Right.
And I think that. Go ahead, Arthur. Go ahead.
See, I had to talk. We got a lot of Pan-Africans in Chicago.
Absolutely.
Matter of fact, we have the leadership of NCOBRA right here in Chicago. We have their cell numbers and we talk occasionally. And I told Cam, I said, look, I'm not trying to do no cultural stuff. This is all about business, okay? And I wish Pan-Africanism was operational. But at this time, I told him that it's not operational. And if Pan-Africanism is not for real operation for ADOS in the areas of business, education, economics, politics, logistics, systems, and security, then I don't know what we're Pan-African about. Because I ain't doing no foo-foo with anybody.
Yeah.
And I've already given my dashikis to Goodwill. So what we gonna do here?
Well, I want to kind of jump in concerning Pan-Africanism, and then I'm going to jump back into where do we go from here.
Okay.
So I believe that someone said earlier that Pan-Africanism is a mental illness. So I wrote a piece when I first debuted my blog about identity illness, and I really believe that Pan-Africanism is a form of identity illness specifically for ADOS. And the reason why I say that is because people act a certain way when they have trauma in their lives. And this is the medical case manager talking right now. People just bear with me, okay? And oftentimes when they experience so much trauma, and we can definitely trace that back historically with the American descendants of slavery, trauma of slavery, trauma of Jim Crow, trauma of lynching, trauma of stolen wealth, trauma of even seeing like your family sold off, so trauma in fast forwarding to now, trauma of seeing like loved ones incarcerated, trauma of seeing like loved ones killed with impunity, trauma of even looking at Black folk constantly killed with impunity by police officers and vigilantes. So I would say that we are quite a trauma-filled group. And because also there was a stigma placed on Blackness specifically for America, and even when we got the invention of race, it was for purely economic reasons to create a bottom caste. So everything that was considered Black was considered evil, was considered wrong, was considered cruel, was considered everything that you don't like, right? It's the cancer, it's the scar, it's the scourge of the earth. And so when I see your Marcus Garvey and the ones who actually followed that particular sensibility of Pan-Africanism, that was a way I feel to respond to, well, if I look at the continent where I guess like I had ancestors that ran free and was able to govern themselves without the guise of white supremacy over them, that's what I'm going to glean to. And we see, a rise of this particular sensibility and ideology. But the problem with that, and I don't necessarily have an issue with the ideology itself, but the problem with that is that it again takes us away from what we have built here in the United States as descendants of chattel slavery, and what we have invested with blood, sweat, tears, and money to make this nation a nation. And it keeps us away from really advocating for what is owed to us. Like when I played the video of the young man who was talking about, we just want what's owed to us. And I feel that Pan-Africanism kind of takes us away from that, especially when we're talking about, reparations. And to be honest, I would even say to any person with Pan-African sensibilities when they are talking about reparations, is that reparations and Pan-Africanism, as far as ideology, need to be very separate. Because reparations, specifically in the United States, is not a legislation that goes to everybody in the diaspora just because you're here.
Yeah.
And I want to say that Pan-Africanism, the concept, puts American Blacks in debt. It puts us in a place of debt. And that is not okay.
Okay, when you say that, in what sense? No, I want you to give me some clarity. In what sense do you mean?
I'm going to get to it like this. This person is Apollo 8. Melanin is compassion. Melanin is compassion. Melanin is actually needed for a lot of things in a spiritual plane. But I am a person who has compassion. I'm a person who sent money to Ethiopians. I'm a person who fought for Mandela in South Africa and the ending of the apartheid. I'm a person that has sent goats to Haiti. I'm a person who there's an organization in San Francisco called One on One, and they do fistulas. They close fistulas for women in Niger who don't have access to proper medical care. And so that's who I am. So I don't need you with your Pan-African ideology to come tell me that I am somehow, because I'm ADOS, I don't have the concern of Africans at large or the African diaspora in my heart and in my soul and in the work that I do. No, I do individual acts. I do acts that speak to me. Again, if your mission and calling is that now you're going to do some sort of cross-continental, cross-diaspora foundation, then let me know what the name of that is. I might see you with the blessing. But do not tell me that I am somehow indebted to the diaspora because I happen to be born on this soil. And that's how I mean it. I am not indebted to the diaspora. The diaspora is not indebted to me.
Right.
However, in terms of our humanity with each other, absolutely. When something's going wrong with you, I should be there to call attention to it. I should be there to let my government know, what are you doing about this thing over here? What kind of sanctions can you bring to this thing over here? I'm supposed to use the tools that are available to me in my country under my government to help you in your country with your government. And then where I can write personal checks or where I can partner with an organization, I'm supposed to do that.
And I'll just say, because there's one little point that I agree with 99% of what you said, Friday. There's one little point that I would disagree with slightly. I believe the diaspora is indebted to us. I do believe that. And what I would say is,
they are.
What I would say is, like, I see this journey really being kind of like a full circle for at least myself from while I look at my personal journey. Because remember, I came through Pan-Africanism, landed squarely on ADOS, and this is where I'm going to be until we receive repair here in the country that we built and made wealthy. But I will tell you, after we get repair here in the country that we built and made wealthy, I am going to be looking at a certain form of Pan-Africanism, because I'm going to be looking at the West Coast of Africa, talking about reparations to the people that were sold off and that were left for lost, right? Yeah. And so that's the Pan-African discussion I want to have. I want to have a Pan-African reparation discussion post, obviously ADOS reparations here in the country we built and made wealthy. But then let's talk about the repair that needs to come from the West Coast of Africa and those slave empires that were built off our ancestors as well.
I agree, because the Kru people of Senegal clearly knew the way. They was called the Kru. For that reason, they still call the Kru today. Y'all knew how to get here. Ain't nobody come with no guns, no gunpowder, with I don't even know. No one came here with rations looking for us once we got here.
Not one boat, right?
Right, and the Caribbeans didn't even send us a coconut. So I don't want to hear nothing from no diaspora about our issue here.
Not a coconut. Not a coconut. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting because, like, sometimes, like, I remember when I first was, like, exposed to ADOS, and I had some personal cognitive dissonance because I am a daughter of an immigrant. My mother is from Jamaica. My father is ADOS. And I really had to kind of like figure out where is like the line as far as like, diasporan sensibility versus, really being bred here in the American experience. And I'll tell you all something that my mom told me. And I remember she was watching the show and I said it before, and she turned to me, she said, I did tell you that, didn't I? I said, yes, you did. She said to me, you are American. I am Jamaican. So I didn't necessarily have to be concerned about drawing a line. It's already been there. And I think that oftentimes, like, we even get like a lot of pushback from the diaspora, especially, even when it comes to people with these, Pan-African sensibilities, is because we basically did what everyone in the diaspora does. They named themselves. They identified themselves. They set themselves apart. Like, there is no African Brazilian. There is no African Jamaican. There is no African Haitian. There is no African Dominican Republican. There's no African Puerto Rican. They already have corded themselves off based on the nation that they're from. And there's nothing wrong with that, and for whatever that means to them, that's what they advocate for. Even when you are looking from people who have been brought here, even touching back to DACA, and you have people who are affected by that because of the way that they got here, if their parents brought him here when they were children. So they're going to cape based on what's affecting them as a group, as a tribe, and if they do that, I can't fault them for that. Right. Yeah. But it has to be the same thing with us. And especially when we're talking about how do we move forward, especially knowing the historical records of Biden and Harris not having progressive legislation, policies, sensibilities, etc., when it comes to those who descend from chattel slavery.
Right.
You know, I wanted to bring up this article, and then I want to read a little bit from it, and then I want us to kind of jump in a little bit because I know that we are already about an hour 13 in, y'all. Shout out to y'all. Right. So this particular article is from Mogloom, and it says 5 signs Democrats are headed back to the same top-heavy brunch ramping inequality. Gosh, I can't talk. I'm so sorry. And I don't know if have you guys ever heard of a brunch Democrat or what that even means?
Yeah, I used to work with people like that at PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna scroll down so that I can actually show this tweet for folk who may not be familiar with what specifically what a brunch Democrat is. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. Well, we're just gonna go right here. So now that Biden has won, it is time to go back to brunch. Brunch meaning broken healthcare system,
Right.
rampant systemic racism and inequality, underfunded federal programs, not enough to fight climate change, continuation of neoliberalism, that sounds like Dr. Cornel West, and holding back progressive policies and real change. So I just want to highlight a couple of things that they were talking about is in the article. So it says, so here are the 5 sides that the Democrats are heading back to top-heavy brunch and ramping inequality. Okay, so the first one is that Republicans and big business in cabinet. So Biden has been consistent about forming a coalition of people from both sides of the aisle. That doesn't sound like a bad approach to reach his unity goals, but according to progressives, it might be risky. In addition to having more than a decade of corporatists running domestic policy to the detriment of everyday Americans, we also need to confront a generation of unhinged militarism, and mass illegal unconstitutional surveillance, says David Siegel, the executive director of Demand Progress, a liberal advocacy group, according to Politico.
That's a huge thing here. People don't know. So you got to stay involved in government so you know what's going on. Here, I think the company name is something like Palmatier, something tier, and it starts with a P, but that is the company that contracts with LAPD to outfit all police cars on LAPD. When they pull up in front of you, or if you pull up behind them, they see your license plate, they know your standard travel routes and travel times. They know that even when they pull you over, because the technology is on the vehicles to capture your movement as you move around their vehicles. People don't know that. And people are not up in arms about that. But that is such an invasive privacy issue that why are you killing so many people if you already know where people are from, where they're supposed to be? It's deep.
And for me, to what you read, Cynthia, that's why it's so mind-blowing to me that this country would elect a Joe Biden that is throughout his career been for the wholesale, surveillance of the public, right? He is on record voting for expanding the surveillance state and against privacy or individual privacy laws. So it just is, this election has shown that the Democrats don't have the ability to pull this wool over at least black folks, at least ADOS eyes anymore, right? Because this candidate was about as flawed as any candidate could be. Now he got in by a very, very slim margin because he was running against probably one of the most horrible presidents that we've had, right? But still at a very slim margin. And without a pandemic, who knows how this thing turns out, right? But I just think looking at Biden's record, NAFTA, and he is a supporter of the Israeli apartheid state. not just the architect of mass incarceration with the 94 crime bill, but he was pushing Reagan to the right in the 80s.
Yes, he was.
Right. And
Yes,
so
he was.
like Reagan's name in the Black community, everybody shudders when you hear it because you know what Reagan did to destroy our communities. Biden was behind him, pushing him further to the right. So
the welfare formula narrative, exactly.
Absolutely. I mean, the lifting of tariffs, like, sending work overseas. It is just
war on drugs.
It is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah,
well, I mean, I think Trump could be cited as maybe, as far as decorum and the way he carried himself as being the worst president, but I would still say that Biden and Miss Harris are worse.
Oh, absolutely. From a record perspective, absolutely.
From a record perspective,
because
exactly.
and then so far, I mean, Trump has not advocated anything overtly that would harm Black people. Not in the same sense that a Biden did, not in the same sense that Miss Harris actually did in California. Because remember, well, you guys are in California. You know that there are several hundred falsely accused people that are still in jail because of Miss Harris, and they're still in jail. So we don't know what's going to happen with that. But you know, that's when I shuddered when I figured out that this guy actually did win.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
Well, if you guys just hold on to that, especially like since we're talking about people actually voting for him, I want you all to take a look at this. So I pulled this particular tweet from Antonio Moore, and then I'm going to show you guys this chart. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it. Here, let me go to the chart first. I'll read this first and then the chart. Okay, so understand the 2-4 points aren't the same in raw numbers. Substantially more Black women vote than Black men. So the 4% is way more people. If the Black female VP candidate led to more Black women choosing Trump, then that is one of the stories of the night. And I'm going to give context to content, I'm going to show you guys this chart, especially what he was talking about. So we're looking at actually, and this is one of the Edison exit polls when it comes to a comparison between 2016 to 2020. And if you look at where it shows like the race in Black people, not just Black men or Black women, but Black people that actually went to Trump, 17% versus 13% for Black men, 4% in 2016 for Hillary, 8% this particular round. So my question is to all of you, because, and I think that there's a lot of different moving parts that we can kind of contribute to those numbers. Do you think this is like a beginning of, Black folk, macrolees, Black Americans, ones who are descendants of slavery, being less enchanted with the Democratic Party and starting to walk away?
Oh, yeah.
I think.
I called that in 2018. Let me tell you something. There's a Dinesh D'Souza did that ridiculous film, I don't know, Death of a Nation, I think he called it. It was like a spin on Birth of a Nation. It kind of had a lot of historical facts mixed in with propaganda, but they had a showing in LA, and I broke my neck to get there. I broke my neck to get there because it was being hosted by a Black conservative radio host. I forget her name, but she has a nice following, right, of Black Republicans in California. And I broke my neck to get there. And when I tell you we took the last seats that night. We had to walk all the way to the front and go sit for this film. And when there was a Q&A, and Dinesh was there, and some people who were voting Republican now, and it was Black men for the most part who were doing the Q&A. When the lights came up, I made a point to turn around so I could see exactly who was in this audience. And in that moment, I was like, Trump's going to have a significant uptick on this re-election. That was 2 years ago for me walking in to see this film. And part of the reason was, okay, people are disenchanted with just the economics of where we're going. And I was like, he's going to a appeal to Black men because Black men in particular have instability when it comes to work. When it comes to work, that's where he's going to be like, I'm your man. I'm going to make sure you work. I'm going to make sure that these folks that don't belong here don't have your jobs, da, 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 da. And sure enough, I think that was the crux of his appeal. And the reality is when it comes to Black immigrants, because you got to remember, they didn't desegregate this data. They disaggregate this data.
Right.
We don't know Black Americans. We do know that there were Black Haitians for Trump. And so when you start into the color of wealth and like looking at Los Angeles, you have African and Caribbean Blacks making and having wealth that's significantly more than American Blacks. What makes you think that they're not going to vote conservatively? What makes you think that just on our history, which is not their history, that they are going to vote how we have historically voted? Those people have their own issues. When they do immigrate here, they don't want anyone else here because, to be very honest, it's expensive to immigrate to the United States. And they have to work financially. In order for them to bring their family members in, that means they got to do that job 2, 3, 4, 5 times to bring everybody over. So do they want people running up in here illegally when they done spent $100,000 US to get their family here? Like, no. But again, don't nobody want to have that conversation. But Black 80 people are xenophobic. Are we really xenophobic? Or we
just telling the truth? Right. Are we just telling you the truth? I mean, like, I think that, like, I believe that everybody here read Immigration and the Remaking of Black America. And I remember even calling into Yvette's show and saying that when I was reading these chapters, like, I was looking at the immigration story of my own personal family on my mama's side. You know, my grandfather came here in 1942, 43, something like that. He worked on a sugarcane plantation in Mississippi. He worked there for like about a couple of years and then ended up selling his skill point to Rock Island, which is a railroad yard in Chicago, and then came up to Chicago. And because he was a mechanic by trade. And then once he actually got in and got his footing, and the company sponsored him in order for him to stay here and become legal and et cetera, because it was a company that brought him over here in the first place so he could work, which a lot of Jamaicans, that's what happened, then he was able to, buy property, a couple of them, right? And then send for my mother. And then, and then was able to send for other family members, So there was some certain type of, set aside specifically for him that he was able to take advantage of to actually bring more family members over here. We just gotta, and we just also, to be real, that's not necessarily something that was available to most ADOS people at that time.
No, so, when we did the Great Migration to parallel times, right? The Great Migration was happening in the 40s. There was no government assistance for the people who were in the rural South to go work in the industrial North in order to make it easier, in order to help them buy property. So much property was lost during that Great Migration.
That's right.
That's
walked away from it. They couldn't afford to pay the taxes. There was no program, to help you
skirt it off or threaten to give up your property, like what happened to George Floyd's family.
So that's the part I think gets lost.
Your farm business back down south, like that didn't exist.
Yeah. And Friday, I can't tell y'all where I got the numbers from because I gotta keep my political allies in offices under wraps, but 60% of Black immigrants in Cook County, which is where Chicago is located, voted for Trump.
Wow. Wow. So yeah, ADOS moving forward will be about disaggregating data so that we can have specificity on how we move politically, and so that we are not just sort of put into this lump of Blackness, because it does matter. And I think that is a move forward. I also think we got to look at what happened in Georgia, because Stacey Abrams, you know, she did follow the Hillary Clinton model. She got her nonprofit. Her nonprofit was all about registering voters. At the same time, though, talk about timing. Coincidentally, Georgia also changed its state law so that when you registered to get your driver's license, you were automatically registered to vote. So we as West need to be looking into our states. That is the law here in California, but we need to be looking at our other states to see if that's a law or not. And if it's not, that's something ADOS could potentially make like a national objective for the states that we live in, just so that we get our numbers up.
Well, the other thing that I'd like for ADOS to advocate for is for felons, even those that are in prison, to be able to vote. Because we have two states, I think it's Maine and Vermont, where if you're a felon, you can vote. And to me, there is no constitutional reason why, just because a person is a felon, that they shouldn't be able to vote. That makes no sense.
Agreed.
People there should be going out to register them in droves because they may not know.
Right. They're still getting counted for state allocations. They're still getting counted as far as population. Absolutely.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And also, I would love to get rid of the Electoral College since it has its rooting in slavery.
Right.
Absolutely.
So you see how the game works in politics, right? Because Trump was totally elected by the Electoral College. Prior to his winning by the Electoral College, he had consistently been saying, I'm going to do away with it. It's antiquated. It's this and that. Because he won by it, he left it intact. Now, if he had done what he said he was going to do, he might be the president a second term. But because that system, which is built on structural racism, won for him, he let it go. I tell people the United States of America is a republic. The reason it's a republic is because they wanted protections against the populist vote for religious persecution and this, that, and the other. They built into the 3/5 of a man foolishness for counting in the Electoral College. But when you look at the Electoral College at its core, it does not and has not ever afforded Black people in these here United States to exert political will, particularly at the presidential level. So we know how to do it because the Republic does it, but they don't do it for us.
Well, you know, there were 9 attempts in the 20th century, at least 9 attempts to get rid of the Electoral College. I think 7 of those attempts were by Democratic legislatures, and the other 2 were by Republican legislatures. But it's a problem, and we need to at least advocate to get rid of it.
And the progressives who want to be progressive, they should make that a priority. Absolutely.
I agree.
Has the Green Party gained any kind of traction in California?
Not enough.
Not as visible, yeah.
Yeah, not enough. And, you know, there have been conversations about, can we Tea Party the Democratic Party, or can we, you know, can we find another party? I think one of the challenges is what might work, let's say on the West Coast, is not going to work in the Black Belt, is not going to work, you know, in the Northeast, like Chicago, New York, urban, you know, Detroit areas. And I think that, you know, kind of like grassroots advocacy, which is for the most part what ADOS has been, I think we're going to have to start with some of those elections like Yvette talked about, the dog catcher.
Yeah, she like talking about the dog catcher. I was about to say, you must have a friend running for dog catcher that you really, really like, because you talk about that a lot.
Ooh, Yvette?
Yeah, because you know, like she was like, if you gotta vote for the dog catcher, I'm like, who is running dog catcher? You talk about that office a lot.
I'm right. Our Julie's shirt today, but you know, we got to look at her election. The fact that she spent $25,000 and was able to garner 100,000 votes in that race. I'm like, what, girl? When is your blueprint book coming out on how you did this? Because again, those dog catcher races, to maybe some of the community college boards, you know, those things on the ballot that people don't even know, like what we like, the things that we don't know anything about. Those particular races are the races that we need to actually start looking at and whether it's by party that we want to start trying to tea party at the lowest scales, you know, in those races, that's how we have to start being strategic and going grassroots, taking one position, and then you see the next position. And then as people kind of graduate up, or there's some movement, or now you can go from the metro, like a Jakari, over to city council. Okay, well, once we got this metro seat filled, okay, we know we're going to get behind Jakari. There should be 10 more people lined up to go get LA Metro once Jakari is ready to move to city council. And then let's say, using him for example, he goes from city council to I don't know, some other like local thing, Congress. Maybe he goes from city council to Congress. Again, we got to keep with the grassroots until we are present in a way where people are like, oh, ADOS is not playing. They trying to do this.
I like the Tea Party idea.
We could do it.
I think maybe we could call it the wine party. I don't know.
Well, you know, one of the things that I always say, one of the things that I always, you know, say specifically about ADOS is that, you know, we've always been a herded block of voters, you know, specifically for the Democratic Party. I would love to see, and that's why I'm really glad that you said, you know, the Tea Party, is I really would like to see us more as a group that is driven by agenda versus party. You know, because like I think that like if we can start identifying some of these particular key races, even in our local areas, that we want to kind of like look at and take over, so that our agenda can be pushed forward. You know, in your municipalities, then statewide. Eventually, that's going to trickle into the nation. Because I even look at, you know, your reparations bill that your governor signed, and I remember some years ago when Bush Jr. was in office, and California had a proposition for same-sex marriage that passed, but then it got rescinded. But I really believe that that particular proposition was a driving force nationwide to actually ratify same-sex marriage federally. And we have seen previously how local legislation can actually drive, you know, federal policy at the top. And I almost can see, because I don't have a crystal ball in front of me, but, you know, AB 3121, you know, being that, you know, force, especially since you guys work so hard at, you know, shout out to ADOS California, period, for working so hard to get that language changed so that it can be more specific to those who descend from chattel slavery.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how we view AB 3121, Cynthia, is kind of the bellwether for the rest of the country to put everyone on notice that, hey, this is how we need lineage specificity, and this is how we see the imperative for reparations, right? Because I know a lot of the pushback on AB 3121 was that, you know, we can't do local reparations, and I 100% agree with that. But what we can do is have localities that are pressuring the federal government to actually put forward a true and comprehensive program of reparations. And I think with AB 3121, in fact, I know we fired that first shot from California. And so, you know, we continue to work with that. There's a lot of work that's happening right now with, you know, because all that was to establish the task force. Right now, we have to go through the process of actually staffing that task force, making sure we're identifying people that are going to be aligned with ADOS ideology and are going to do the correct job on that task force and bring us proposals that we need. But then also making sure that task force is communicating to the federal government, maybe calling up a Sheila Jackson Lee and letting her know, hey, here are our findings. Here's what we put together as far as proposals for the federal government, right? So I think you're absolutely right. I mean, what we try to do out here is break the ice. And I think we did that. And now it's, you know, I see like I love watching what they're doing in Mississippi with ADOS Mississippi. I mean, they are working on the ground to try to push. Yeah, shout out there. I mean, you heard about it in DMV on one of our shows. They have a reparations bill that they're attached to. So I agree with you. I think we have to get agenda focused And we have to understand that if they're going to try to, you know, push us to the back of the room at the federal level, you can still get into your city councilman's office. You can still get into your local alderman's office. You know, hell, if the dog catcher has an opinion on reparations, you need to be talking to him as well, right? Like we need to make
Shout
sure.
out to the dog catcher.
Shout out to the dog catcher.
catcher.
But I think that's a very relevant sort of analogy for how we need to do our politics, right? You need to be in these neighborhood councils. You need to know what's going on your school boards. You need to be engaged in bringing that Black agenda to those spaces, and that will, from the grassroots, bubble up, right? And so I think that's the core and the crux of what we're trying to do.
Right, and this is where Black people need to step it up. I was one day I was talking to Cynthia about when I lived in a white upper middle class neighborhood. Whenever either the alderman or the congressman called a meeting, it was packed.
Yeah.
Okay. When the same thing happened when I moved into a predominantly Black neighborhood, it was like 6 people that showed up.
Yeah.
No.
All older people too. All older people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
COVID has actually in LA, it's been a little bit of a blessing, because now that everything is on Zoom, guess what?
Right.
Black people
No
can
excuse.
show up. And they can show up. Why? Because they can get there from their phone. They don't have to, you know, get transportation, figure out. Here, our city hall, you got to figure out your parking situation, because there's no parking around there, and all the parking that around there you got to pay for. And then when it comes to public comments, you know, you go thinking, okay, well, if I go at this time, maybe I could get my public comment. And no, they play you. They play you by hearing from the other intergovernmental offices first, and then they put the public comment way to the back end. So you think you taking off work and you can get, okay, if I take half a day, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get my public comment. And no, you're not, because they're not gonna get to that public comment until 3 o'clock. And so now you didn't prepare to take a whole day because you hope you can get it in. This COVID now, thanks to the Zoom, and you can get in and you can watch and you can do your comments, you know, you can add your public comment. It has changed the game. And I think that municipalities are going to have to keep this technology. Why?
And I want to add something to that, Friday, because another thing that can happen a lot of times with these Zoom meetings or Facebook Lives, that's also a great way for you to learn who your legislatures are in your local areas.
right.
I remember I was watching a Facebook Live with this task force that they're trying to put together in Illinois concerning, you know, equity and racial disparity and equity. And one of the things that you got a chance to see was the Illinois Black Caucus actually representing a lot of their particular points. And so you were not only able to comment, but you were able to see, okay, well, who are all these particular representatives? Because these are the people who we need to know so that we can reach out to them and get them on, I hate saying on code, but on code with what it is our agenda needs to be, or the agenda that we want them to adhere to when it comes to, you know, the electorate in their state, you know, and especially like one of the things that we're working on locally is an executive order that we want our governor to sign to, one, declare violence as a public health crisis, and also to create a task force like you guys to distribute COVID money to Black communities in Illinois that have been devastated by COVID-19 and the BLM protest.
Right.
So, and especially to Black businesses that have not come back, who have closed down, or who are struggling because they don't have the wealth cushion that, you know, white businesses do.
Oh, the other thing, Cynthia, one more thing that we're working to get passed at the state level is an identity bill to designate ADOS as a separate identity.
Right.
Period.
That is something that's happening around the country. We're doing the same thing here in California at the state level and at the city level. I mean, we met with
city level too. Okay.
We met with the mayor. I mean, I have a background in city contracting, and I lived in Atlanta for a good time and saw what Maynard Jackson was able to do through city contracting to build Atlanta into that, quote unquote chocolate city that it became, right? So here locally in Los Angeles, we met with the mayor and learned that, we were hoping we would get Prop 16 that would bring back affirmative action, and then we could use that as a vehicle to be able to target, bids and resources of the cities directly to our communities. Unfortunately, that was defeated. That's a whole nother story. But
we're gonna have to bring you back on so you can talk about that.
Exactly. But the lineage specificity that you speak of, Arthur, I mean, we all know that is the linchpin. That is what is going to make all the rest of this work. And so we went in and met with the mayor, and we're trying to go down different pathways of how do we get a ADOS specification into the city charter. And what we heard was, you got to have your city council people on board, right? You got to have somebody who's going to be a champion for that sort of bill. And then you got to have some muscle behind that of other city council people, right? So how do you get your city council people? You show up at the Zoom meetings and you let them know you're watching, right? You let them know that your vote depends on how they move on your specific ethnicity bill that you have interest in. So this has always been a grassroots movement, and it always will be, right? Because the people are what are going to move policy. So we have to understand that and just start getting activated in our own spaces with ethnicity bills, with specific benefits and resources to our communities. That's how we move this needle. It's how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? And we gotta remember that and continue to take these small steps wherever you are and whatever you're doing. I say that pretty much anytime I'm on an interview. I was like, hey, get activated. Like I know a lot of people watch your show, watch our show, watch Yvette's show or Tone's show, and they're just like, okay, those guys are doing what they're doing. And you got to understand, no, we're just regular people who have the same vision, have the same want and desire to see collective uplift. And so we said, well, hey, what neighborhood am I in? Who's my city council? Let me go meet with him, see where he stands. Right. Let me go talk to whoever I can and who I can get a meeting with, and let them know I'm here. And then there are other people who want to let them know they're here. So it's always been a movement of the people. So
it's a job.
It is a job. I mean, I even think about like doing this stuff. I was not trying to do no YouTube show, y'all. This was something I completely fell into when COVID hit. And I was making comments and somebody said, oh, hold on, you talk a lot about racism. Let's talk more about that. And now I'm here. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's how like a lot of us actually ended up coming to this space. One, because like, Yvette and Tone, really got that messaging out about, American descendants of slavery. And I believe it resonated with a lot of us because I think that a lot of us was walking around lost. Like, I don't know who I am. You know what I'm saying? And because we were told who we are was not good enough. Right. And then so like now that we have like a better understanding of who we are and also the cost that is part of being ADOS is a heavy cost. Right. Now we are, are able to talk to our family members and talk to our neighbors and talk to others that are around us and our coworkers about, really who we are and our position in America. And then now we have added our voice to this particular atmosphere so that we can reach more people to say, this is who we are and this is what we're fighting for, because America never made us whole.
And you know what? And see, Cynthia's the general secretary of ADOS Chicago. I'm the vice president of ADOS Chicago. I think we can attest that we work at least 25 hours a week after our jobs dealing with ADOS. We don't get
25. 25. That's all. That's it.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't know when I don't work on. I mean, between doing this, between doing ADOS work, between doing my job. I mean, I don't know when I don't work. I guess it's when I'm sleeping. And that's little.
And then she snapped her neck a little bit when I sipped I don't know. Have you ever been on my blog, Miss Friday?
No, I see what's going on since you got that nice, wonderful wine glass.
Have you ever been on my blog, ADOS Absolute?
Let me find it right now.
ADOS Absolute.com.
The link is in the show notes. Oh my God, the link
Yeah.
is in the show notes below, people.
If
So
you've
make
ever
sure
been
you
on my
guys check
blog,
it
you
out.
would know that I cannot operate without this. Okay.
So
understand.
back to the work though, Arthur. Like in all seriousness, I mean, when
Yeah.
I got involved with ADOS Los Angeles,
Yes, sir.
I came in contact with some of the hardest working individuals I've ever been, and I've been in professional life for over 20 years. So
Mm.
like Friday, I know she won't say it, but Friday wakes up early and goes to bed later. She goes to bed too late because she's
Yeah.
still sending messages at like 10:30, right? And
Right.
we're still working and collaborating. This is a all day, every day sort of thing, right? Because we like you see the imperative of this, we all see the imperative of it, right?
Yeah.
And the pathway that we have to take. And I'm a father. I say this all the time. I've got a 14-year-old. I've got an 11-year-old, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't leave this to them on the current trajectory that it's on. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just a that would be me failing them as a parent if I don't get activated and I don't try to change our direction right now and where we're heading. Particularly in a
Yeah,
post-COVID world.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's even though like I don't have children, but I have nieces. I have great nieces. I have nephew. I have generations after me, and one of the things that really motivates me is that I want them not to struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want them. I remember when I was younger thinking that, oh, well, King and Malcolm marched back in the 60s, right? So we're okay. And I think that oftentimes I was shrouded because like it looked like, as a family, we were doing fine. I mean, I lived in a house, I went to a Catholic school, right?
Mhm.
But, the older that I got and the more that I started to see that and especially like, and I think that this happened when I went to high school and I started comparing my life to
Mm-hmm.
my white student counterparts,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very different.
Yeah.
As far as like what they were able to have access to versus myself. I remember like I was seeing like the white student population by the time they was 15, 16, they was driving to school.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and parents, as soon as they got a license, they got a car, right? They had it waiting. Some of them was driving new cars.
Right.
Yep.
I had a friend who was Filipino who had a brand new car, but her parents was worried about her driving it, so it just sat at the house. I'm like, then why you
Yeah.
buy it? But then again, but like, and then I remember like, looking at, my parents like, well, why can't you do that for me? You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't until like I was like well into my third year of college that my parents like scrounged money together to get me a used 1988 New Yorker that I had for
Yeah.
9 years until it blew up on my way to work. I was
I've had
like,
a
I
couple
heard
cars blow up on
boom,
me.
and I was
Yeah.
like, well, that car is dead now. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And I'd be like, and that's only because they was getting tired of taking me back and forth to school. But I just think about like even like getting student loans to pay for school, and and not necessarily having like that cushion. You know what I'm saying? Even though
Yeah.
both my parents worked and all this other stuff, but the wealth cushion was just not there. In order for me, like it was for like the other student population that I was around, that could catch me for anything that I needed or wanted at that time, like the other
Yeah.
students. So and that became, and I was and then like really like listening to Van Tone and really getting hip to the data when it comes to Black ADOS positionality in the United States. It really made me. I started to connect the dots. I'm like, oh, that's why I wasn't able to do this, and this is why I got student debt, and this is why I can't do this.
Yeah.
It happens. I work in that world. I work for very wealthy people. And I know that we do not understand. We just don't understand it. And the crazy thing about it is there have been surveys done where people will be like, oh, no, I got there on my own. No, you didn't.
No.
No, you didn't.
They go to
Lies upon lies upon lies.
But they'll
private,
tell that lie over and over again. Right?
but they'll say,
They
no,
do.
I did this
Yeah.
on my own. No, you have financial help. You really did. And I mean, multi-generational wealth is the kind of wealth that like my clients have. And when you see how they build it, when you see the programs that their kids are able to do for summer, like for you just not home from school. You learning some stuff. You doing some foreign travel. You learning some high level networking because you at some foo-foo camp with horseback riding and whatever. And so your network expands in the summertime. It's not just you're home, you home and you got to make your own lunches because your mom or dad is not home until dinner. It's a whole different way of life. And people really just do not understand that.
I think it's something
how many of us, I'm sorry, how many of these had this particular narrative when you talk about summer? You go south in the summer.
I mean, that's what I did. Now, I didn't sit my down south because I'm like,
I was in the South. So, yeah. I think you said something really powerful though, Cynthia, in that you don't want your family to struggle. And we have to understand like how profound that statement is from a descendant of slavery here in this country that built this country, right? Like our aspirations and where we view ourselves should be so much further than just we don't want to struggle, right? Like we should be in a place, and this is why I advocate, because I think I told Friday this the other day, we shouldn't be a bottom cast, we should be a top cast. I want us to win. I want us to win. I want us to win in the business deals. I want us to win in these transactions. I want us to win in taxes. I want us to win across the board and have this economy and this country work for us as it has worked for all these other groups for all these years. So I think part of what I think about when I think about reparations is not just the repayment or the wealth gap, right? Like we shouldn't just be 13% of the wealth, right? We should be like 50% of the wealth at 13% of the population.
That's
so
right.
I'm working to get us there, like where not only do they not have to struggle, but then my great grandchildren and my great great grandchildren don't have to even think about it, right? Like the counterparts across the tracks that we all know and had exposure to.
That's
so
right.
I think that's just a key point. Like let's
That's
get
right.
we don't want to struggle, we want to win.
Yeah, and see, it's just like Cynthia will attest, I tell white people all the time that reparations is also convenience you better. I said, and they get embarrassed. I said, because you know how most white people don't like black people living in their areas and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, if we had reparations, we wouldn't have any need to move here.
Yeah. Or when we move into your area,
Oh,
your value, if we are a post-reparations world, we move into your value or your area, guess what? Your value goes up.
No, I don't even want the inconvenience of living around white people.
I don't. I agree, brother. I agree.
Because
Arthur told that to a white cop that we were when we were in front of the governor's mansion, pushing him to sign this executive order, and so the neighbors called the cops on us, and we was just 3 Negroes, me, Arthur, and Marlon, our ADOS president, and we did a mini press conference. We was only going to be there for like 5 minutes. We did a mini press conference imploring, to sign this executive order, and then we was going to be about our way. It was Saturday. We had stuff to do. And then next thing you know, you had all these cop cars just come bum rushing. We was like, what in the world? And then so on that particular block, it was permit parking. If you don't live on that block, then you can get a ticket. So I had to move my car and I had to come and walk on back, right? And then we ended up actually having this conversation with these 7 cops that was called on 3 Negroes. And one of the things that Arthur said to him, to one of the cops, he said, to be honest, most black people don't want to live around white people. And then the cop was like, well, why not? And I was like, Exhibit A. I mean, like, it's 3 of us in this one area, and all we want to do, and we are doing everything that a citizen should do is to tell the person that we elected to actually recognize us and to give us what, we elected you for, and it's to take care of our community. If we had the money to take care of our community, to build up our homes, to build up our educational institutions, to build up
businesses.
and our business. Exactly. Do you think that we are going to always want to just, just kowtow around, you just because we want to be next to white folk? Most people move towards white neighborhoods is because we want the resources that's in that neighborhood, not just because, we want to be buddy. I mean, like, I have white friends. I'm not going to say some of my best friends are white friends. I'm not going to do that. But I'm just saying that, we have, diverse population of people that we hang around, but we don't necessarily want, like you Arthur just said, the inconvenience of being watched.
Right. And I told you that it's mostly unpleasant for black people to be around white people. And they ain't like
a
that
majority.
Either.
Yeah.
But I'm just being honest.
I think, Cynthia, too, that's part of the pushback on reparations is because if you look at the history of this country, white folks have always wanted us around. They just wanted us around in a subservient role, right? They wanted us in the houses, but they wanted us cleaning, cooking, and being their chattel, right? And being subservient to them in every way, because they hate to love us, kind of thing, right? So I agree. Like we, part of the pushback I think against reparations is us repairing ourselves and then being able to own and control our own communities. Because if you look at like in the 20s during the Renaissance, like they would sneak down to our blues and jazz clubs, right, to try to get the party on, kind of thing, right? That they don't want to return to that. They don't want to return to where they have to seek us out, because we are building communities and we are thriving in our communities, and our communities are self-sufficient. Right. So I think that's part of the pushback that we get on reparations.
Well, I don't mind white people coming to our neighborhoods to spend money.
I don't either. As long as they clear when they get,
after they spend the money,
down first,
then leave. That's how I look at it.
And or don't burn down our stuff.
Yeah. But I
exactly the protection part of it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
If we were able to have the kind of access to wealth, access to capital, access to protection of our businesses, like I told the cops, you would probably see a black person once every 4 months. Okay? Because most black people, it's unpleasant for black. I told them they didn't like that. I said it's unpleasant for most black people to be around most white people. And they kind of look at me like, and it's the truth.
I mean, like, I'm just saying, like, we can just see like all the stuff that was happening in the past 2 years that came up on social media. You got the barbecue Becky. You got that's calling the people because they were barbecuing in the park in Oakland. You had poolside Paul that called the cops on the two black women who were chilling at a public pool. You had what else? There's so many. You had what happened? What's the people in New York?
Zimmerman shooting Trayvon.
Yeah,
in a primarily white neighborhood.
Or the Amy Cooper in the Amy Cooper world, calling the cops, talking about, I'm going to tell him it's an African American that is assaulting me, and he was just like, just put your dog on a leash. I mean, it's too many of these events, too many, and we are in 2020, gonna be 2021, and we still dealing with the same stuff. I mean, that's the type of stuff that got Greenwood District burned down because a Karen was lying on a black man saying that he raped her and he ain't ever touched her. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's the same thing that happened in Rosewood. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it happens way too much, and we're still dealing with the same thing over and over again. So I'm gonna ask all y'all, because we over the 2-hour mark, and this is a great conversation. Woo, Charlie! But anywho, I'm gonna ask you all. Last word, everyone, go around. Where do we go from here? Friday, since you to my hold on. What hand is this? Okay, you over here. Your left. Usually for my right, yeah, that's my left. On the television on the right. So please tell us, where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? We go to standing on the necks of these newly electeds. Period.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
So I pass the baton, Arthur, Mr. Ward.
No, I'm standing with you on this one, Friday, because we gotta make things very uncomfortable for these people when it comes to reparations. Okay,
Absolutely.
make it uncomfortable for these people, enlighten more of our people as to what they need to be about and what we need to do, and to make our version of reparations the prominent one. That's what I feel.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the only one. Yeah,
The
no,
only one.
I
There
agree
you
with
go.
Friday. I think we are, in a post ADOS world, we are in a unique position to have a clarity. Other people are dancing in the streets or they're crying and turning red in the face and things like that. And I think the majority of ADOS went to sleep on election night and woke up, even though we didn't have a decision. But when we finally got a decision, I think all of us kind of just looked and said, okay, well, that means we gotta go to Biden, right? We gotta pressure him.
Right.
If it had been the other guy, we got to pressure him. So I think our mission stays the same, regardless of who is sitting in the White House or on down the line. So where do we go from here? We keep marching forward to reparations. That's where we go.
That's right.
Everybody agreeing with Friday. She's doing good tonight.
I always agree with Friday.
Right.
I let her get on fire. And I just sit back
I'm gonna tell y'all too. Like, I be watching Politics in Black, and I be, even though I'm an atheist, I be like, Amen, Friday.
She give you the Holy Ghost. She will give you the Holy Ghost.
Right.
We got a lot of atheists. I'm an atheist too, but we got a lot of atheist ADOS in Chicago.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and one more thing I would say, where do we go from here? Just don't do this, y'all. Just don't
do that.
Do that.
Don't do that.
Stop it. I need that to stop right now. But I would love to. I just want to just thank you, Chad and Friday. Thank you so much for gracing the 13% with your presence. And enjoying. I enjoyed this conversation. Yes.
I'm gonna be like Arthur Ward. I'm gonna go. I done checked out your site. I'm gonna have me something from your site.
What?
Right along with you. Mr. Ward's
Thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, thank you for having us on. This has been a great conversation. I love what you guys are doing. We watch we watch what you're doing in Chicago. We're supportive of everything you're doing. So I always say this is a family affair. So anything you guys need, don't hesitate to reach out to ADOS Los Angeles, myself, or Friday.
That's
awesome.
Right
I
on.
love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah. And everyone who was watching, thank you guys so much for watching the 13%. Again, make sure you guys like this video, share it on your social media platforms. Also hit that bell every time that we go live that you get a notification. And also, if you enjoy the content, again, please consider being a Patreon. That helps us so much. And we want to thank our patrons. And so far that we thank Marsha Filipello, BestName Ever, Marlon Watson, and me, because I believe in what we do. And I want us leave on this particular note because, one of the reasons why I call it, where do we go from here? We read last year, where do we go from here, from chaos to community, Dr. King Jr. And I think it would be great, since we are going to go on hiatus until next year. We're going to come back on King's birthday. And I think it would be
powerful.
Yes. We're coming back. We're going to take a break. We're coming back on King's birthday. So I think it would be very proper for King to play us out.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. Now, this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.